Good morning, everybody. Yay, there we go. Squeak, squeak, says Kiri. Welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and a squeaky Kiri. Squeak, squeak. You gonna get it? You gonna get it? Huh? Get it. Get that ball. Get that ball. Good girl. Yay. All right, good. You've had your morning squeak, everybody. I mean, like I said, I don't think I'm going to finish Mr. Giant ever, but there are still things to talk about on him, so... Hi, Doglet. Kiri persists in making sure everyone hears the squeaks. Good morning. Yes, good morning, squeaks, says Kiri. Good morning, all you people watching online. Good girl. She's done. She went and laid down. I'm going to put Justin in my ear, as we have disembodied voice Justin. I totally got thrown off of my usual intro, so welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and disembodied voice Justin, and Squeaky Kiri. Hey, Asimar, thank you for the sub, your half-a-year anniversary. Very good. Half-a-year sub-anniversary, we should call it that. That's probably what it's actually called. The interwebs is undoubtedly named that. How's it going, guys? How art thou? This day before giving of thanks and turkey devouration. Although some people do not have turkey for Thanksgiving, and that's perfectly fair, even though some people regard that as a heresy. Getting myself organized. As organized as I can get. Sleep was a bit up and down last night, so I feel a little discombobulated this morning. Otherwise, how are y'all? Hello, everybody. Right, Kiri? Kiri's like, yeah, we're a little bit discombobulated today. We like using the word discombobulated, so we're going to do it. And chat is kind of lazy. Hi, chat. Chat is like very slow today. There we go. There's trouble. Trouble with the save. Happy Thanksgiving Eve. Oh, nice. Yeah, finish your writing work. I'm in that same boat doing National Novel Writing Month. Yes, happy Squeaky Toy Kiri did indeed occur this morning. Oh, we're going to do this big central part of the dude today, guys. Because I thought I would paint it the way to traditionally paint this section with the stomach would be to, paint and highlight and shade all the little diamonds. But here, you are okay with being slow. I am also slow. However... there's another way to paint this, and it's to paint it the way we did the hair, which is to paint it more in groups, if it is one area, to ignore the texture and paint it as if it is a single area, and then to come back and put in the details. So one thing I am going to do, though, is clean up a little bit. I've got a little bit of mold line left over here. I want to clean that up before I start doing it. Yeah, I kind of want to do a little Thanksgiving prep today as well. I should make my cream of mushroom soup for the green bean casserole. I was thinking about that. And I could dice up some of the onions and stuff that needs to go into the stuffing. You get that list. Because really, if I do some of it today, then it'll be less crap to deal with tomorrow, and I can spend a lot of the day playing computer games while the turkey is cooking, and that's the ideal Thanksgiving, right? Been trying to do NMM today. Results are varied. Yeah, that's true, Kurtiko. I mean, even I have trouble dialing in NMM sometimes. It's just, sometimes you have to, stop and think about, okay, where is my light source? Where is my shadow going to be? Is my shadow dark enough? Is my highlight bright enough? Those things are the keys to troubleshooting NMM. Is where's my light source? Where's my shadow? Is my shadow dark enough? And is my highlight bright enough? Remember, NMM should always go up to pure white, or very close to it. Just going to continue. As you can see, I use the knife on Bones Black for a lot of cleanup. I just find it's the most efficient tool. So yeah, if you're trying to troubleshoot NMM, those are your questions to ask yourself. There we are. We got scrape a little bit of this excess stuff off of here. Yay, use my fingernail a lot. Oh, yeah, I do, you're right, I do need to salt the turkey today. Assault the turkey. Okay. Yeah, I actually haven't done that beforehand. I salt all my other meat, but, I've only done a turkey for Thanksgiving for myself, once in the whole past, so... Thanks for the reminder, D. Clearman. He or she does need to get salted today. Assaulted. But yeah, my turkey is thawed, so yay. You're not eating till Friday. Yeah. Yeah, I guess you could do it a couple days in advance for a turkey as far as, like, because they're so big, right? You've got a lot. Oh, good. Yeah, Cornico. Yeah, I mean, every painter has different mixes for NMM, and even mine change depending. Like, this guy has a very ruddy, warm NMM for his gold, and then, you know, there's the blue liner that we use for the iron. So, yeah. Hey, Nomad Zeke, how's it going? Oh, yeah, yeah, I need to bake, too. I want to make some Mexican wedding cakes or you know, whatever you want to call them. Everybody calls them like Russian Russian tea cakes is what
Russian tea cakes or Mexican wedding cookies.
They're the same thing.
But you can't call them Mexican wedding cakes.
I can totally do that.
No.
I usually call them Russian tea cakes, and then some people don't know what I'm talking about until I say Mexican wedding cookies. And my family always called them crescents because Mom just made them in crescent moon shapes, and I just make them in little balls. We have had pumpkin pie. We've been sinning on the low carb diet because David bought a pumpkin pie well in advance. It is now demolished, and I had to buy an apple pie yesterday or the day before to make sure we had pie for Thanksgiving because in the middle of doing everything else, I'm not going to make pie. Yeah, I mean, like I said, Val, I'm unlikely to finish him because he has enough flaws on him that I'm just like, meh. And he's also huge, right? And the problem with doing a big model like this all on stream is that you repeat yourself a lot. So what Fire Giant is likely to be used for is when I want to talk about like a specific topic where he's got something going on that would be a good demo for that. Yeah. I'm gonna have to attack that. These mold lines are sometimes really annoying when they go into the grooves. But yeah, I don't know. I'm like, I look at Fire Giant and I think about the fact that I still have to repeat a lot of stuff that I've already like talked about to finish him, and I just kind of go, I don't really want to put you guys through that, so. Yeah, I mean, brining and dry brining do the same thing, like D. Clearman says. It draws moisture out of the meat. Yeah, the brine reabsorbs, and then it's tenderizes and flavorizes it. So if you ever do, like, especially if you ever do pork, like if you really don't like pork chops or pork loin or pork tenderloin because you think it always is kind of dry and flavorless, try salting it a day or two in advance and wrapping in plastic and letting it sit in your fridge before you cook it, and you're going to notice a huge difference. Huge difference. Salt is definitely... We salt all the meat. Every meat we cook, almost. I think every meat we cook.
Yeah, pretty much.
We salt.
I can't think of any exceptions.
Yeah. Like, the only one that I sometimes am a bit lax on is ribeye steaks. Like, if I get a fresh ribeye steak and I intend to do it that night, maybe it'll only get half a day of salt. And in the past, I haven't pre-salted them at all, just because ribeye is so tasty on its own. It doesn't really need it. It's just a bonus. Oh, you use spices too, huh, D. Clearman? Cool. Cloud Giant Queen? Oh, the one with the... No, I'm never going to finish her Jetta Rose. She has some mold issues, the one that I have, that I just can't get by. Like, in order for me to finish a model on stream, it has to be, one, it has to be a really good model. Two, I have to have spent the time to clean it. You know, and three, it has to have no major, huge flaws on it that make me sad. I've gotten to the point where it's like, I really have to... really have to like the model to finish it. So that's why in the new models that I've picked to paint, I am picking models that I really, really like and I've wanted to paint for a while so that I actually will finish them on stream. Otherwise, it's just like... And Fire Giant is just like... He's just a lot of repetition, right? I mean, it's just a lot of fiddly bits and a lot of repetition. It would take forever. So although I'm still going to use him to show you guys stuff and as an illustration of stuff... Oh, he's definitely not in focus fixed. He's not a model I think I would finish, but like we're going to talk about doing the cape eventually, you know, stuff like that. We're going to talk about doing this stuff today. So let me get some reds out. Except I already glued him together, Val. And he's not good enough to be a bust in my opinion. I'm picky about my busts. Plus that still means I need to repeat all of this stuff and repaint the back of the sword, you know. There are just some models, frankly, that aren't worth it to me. Like, this guy is cool, and he'd be cool for a D&D model, and if I had to paint him as a D&D antagonist, I would put a fast and quick and dirty paint job on the rest of him and just let it go. There's a bust like that I'm kind of considering just letting go. There's another one, actually, that I did let go in the past and just trashed, because it was, there were enough flaws with it that I would have had so much time green stuff and puttying it to make it to the point where I really wanted to work on it again, that I just gave up. Not worth it. Would rather work on something new. So, yeah, Tashi. I did think about that, Tashi. I did think about just painting the front of this, just for a photo. And letting it go. Which is totally fair. Totally fair. I don't brine in salt water, but I do salt the meat. So, I will do that today. It will help. Because wet brining never made sense to me. I'm just like, I guess, it does the same thing, but it's less work and less mess to dry brine for me. Just salt. Salt it. Ah, I see. Yeah, well, it's a lot. We got an 11-pound turkey, so we got a fairly small turkey. And it is going to be a lot of food, but I love leftovers. And turkey's very freezable. So is turkey soup. Yeah, well, at least both of those meats, though, are freezable and leftoverable, Val. Like, you can always turn around and use the ham in a bean soup or something. Alright, I'm going to use Heraldic Red, which I think is what I was using for most of this. Heraldic's a good medium red. It's a vibrant red, but it still is a little bit dulled down, so it's not like screaming eyeball red like Sione Scarlet is. Sione Scarlet versus here. Let's see. Let's show you the difference. Sione Scarlet's very close to clear red, so you can see the difference between the two. This is a bit darker, has a bit of other pigments in it to make it just a little bit deeper and darker, which makes it it technically makes it less optimal for mixing, because there's other pigments in there that you have to account for, but it's still got enough basic, a heavy enough red basic load in it that Heraldic is a good, like, if you were starting out with a simple palette where you just bought one good red, one good orange, one good yellow, etc., Heraldic is a good red to do that with. Hey there, Bob and Julie, how's it going? I am not working on Sphinx today, sadly, Julie. I was not in an Egyptian mood today.
Is Sphinx a Julie sculpt?
Yeah. David is here today as well. Because he's got the day off. Everybody be jealous.
I decided to use a vacation day.
He used a vacation day.
I took the day off.
You took the day off, but you're still here, Justin.
Yeah, I said that yesterday. I couldn't help but stop the streams because we're close to the holidays. People might be off. They want to watch the streams.
Yeah.
You count on doing them as a part of your livelihood. So I was like, yeah, there's no reason not to cancel, or no reason to cancel them.
Well, we're already canceling tomorrow and Friday's streams so that we get a break. So there's no reason not to do today's stream. Yeah, a lot of people are off. Yes, apparently a lot of people also took your idea, David, and got off of work. Good for you, people. All right, actually, I'm going to mix up a bunch of different things. So let's see. What did I use? I think I was actually highlighting up with white. Yeah, I was on the red. I was not using yellow to highlight up. I was using white. So I'm going to actually mix up a little bit of white and show you guys what I've got here. And I'm going to look at, I think I was using blue liner a little bit to shade the red. To line anyway. Yeah, I think I was. Yep, because I was being consistent. All right, so our palette for the day. You have most of December off. You saved up your vacation days. That's clever of you, Dragon Eye.
I wonder how many people were planning today for a travel day and then ended up not traveling because COVID.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I know a bunch of people called off their travel, but I think they called it off a bit earlier than we did. We kind of called it off a little bit last minute. But then we were planning to call it off last minute. Like, we pretty much were planning to play it by ear.
Yeah.
Yes, happy pre-turkey day. All right, so we got blue liner here. We got Asmodeus Red, which you all know is my favorite new red from Pathfinder. Is a sexy dark red with a bit of warmth to it. Heraldic Red for our mid-tone. So my first shader, I'm going down 2 steps, and then I'm going to go up several steps with mixes of this, but I'm kind of just winging it. David says he has clogged sinuses today. That's how I'm interpreting that. So we have, so we're going to use 2 shade colors. I'm going to use this, and then for the very dark parts, I'm going to mix in a little bit of blue liner, just like we did, if you remember, out here on the bracelet. You can see where we've got our red, our highlight, and our really dark shadow underneath that white highlight, and that is blue liner. So we're going to do all that. We're going to add some water to it. As you all can see, my dots are pretty much the same size, except I maybe used a little bit too much Asmodeus. It's about 4 drops. And I always thin everything. My white, actually, I always thin 1 to 1. So I've got 4 drops of white and 4 drops of water in there. I only put 1 drop into my base color because I want it to cover. And I may actually add another drop of red just to make sure I get a good solid coat on it. I'm going to do a quick base coat over the top of this, and then I'm going to do wet blending for the shading. So, and we're going to shade this cummerbund piece of armor of his as if it is all one piece. We're going to ignore the diamonds and just pretend it's a rounded, bulging waist guard. Wow, you have a long time off, Tashi. Lots of time to paint. Oh, okay, yeah.
Why are you ignoring the diamonds?
Because I want to show how to just, when you've got light texture, I want to show how to just highlight the whole area en masse to make sure that your overall highlighting is true, and then go back in to pick out the details a bit, kind of like you do with hair.
I see. So you're going to do it eventually, but you want to start by highlighting.
Right. Because otherwise, if you're doing what a lot of people tend to do, with highlighting each diamond individually, you can lose sight of the fact that you're supposed to have a big broad highlight right here on the front of the giant. So. Mm-hmm. So this allows you to pay attention to how your lighting is supposed to be and your under reflection. If this is armor and it's meant to be somewhat reflective, as we've been painting the rest of it, so it's okay to do this. It's okay to ignore the diamonds for now and then come back in. So I wanted to talk about doing that because I think that you get a better result and possibly a faster result this way. And then how much time you want to put in on bringing out the diamond pattern is up to you, and you can get away with doing a very simple treatment that's pretty fast, or you can take more time and put as much time as you might put into it otherwise if you had started out by painting every diamond painstakingly. So I have a little threads of plastic from trying to clean this mold line off, which is annoying me. It's one of those days, isn't it, guys? Get away, little thread of plastic. Get away. There. All right, much better. Oh, only 1 day off this year, Inara. That's hard. Yeah, good, Tashi. Yes, paint so much you make me proud. Yeah, that's what my my ex used to do, Twisted Oma, too, is he just wouldn't use his time off very much, and then he'd take a lot of time off over the holidays, because he normally would have to travel for work, and he just hated traveling around the holidays for obvious reasons. It was a pretty good strategy. So we'll paint this entire bloody cummerbund red. And if you see it beating up, I mean, I washed this model, but it's been ages, so my handling it has probably put some oils back on that are repelling my paint. I'm also using a 5-to-1 mix, so, I mean, my paint is definitely thinned. If you see any beating up, just add a little bit more paint. If you are using your paint full strength and it's still beating up, chances are that you haven't adequately shaken it and you've gotten a lot of binder in your paint. So especially if you see that it's not covering very well. Because you can see, actually, that this red covers pretty well at this level. I mean, it's a 5-to-1 paint to water, but it's covering pretty well here. So Heraldic is that way. It's just a nice base red. Nice, Bad Axel. Or not nice if you didn't get paid for them, right? That's the problem with having days off, is sometimes you have days off and you're not getting paid, and that can be, that could be rather chaotic on the household finances. So I do wash my models so the paint sticks better, but you still will sometimes get some of the beating up, especially because before I glue these guys together, I was, handling some of these lower areas a lot. So when your finger oils can definitely build up on a surface, especially in the winter when you're, putting lotion on yourself and stuff, you can certainly get to the point where parts of your miniature that you've handled a lot repel paint. At which point, it's kind of difficult to say. You got to be really cautious about washing it. You probably could use some rubbing alcohol to take off the excess oils.
I feel like if you just have normal acrylic paints and not inks and not pigments, washing it can work.
Yeah, except that on bones, I've noticed that dipping it in the water can cause the paint to slough off a lot easier than...
I haven't tried it with bones.
Right,
so
bones specifically, I've seen this happen. So that's why I say you've got to be careful. However, the fact that I'm painting this guy top down does make it a little easier because I could very much, just with judicious sponge work, wash the bottom part of him if I needed to and not touch the paintwork that I've done on top. I did not Clover. This is a custom gold, especially that really rich, this really rich reddish gold that I'm using is a custom mix using some of the bones colors. So I've talked about the mix in past videos, but to summarize, it uses rich leather, which is a color that I started using for Nmm Gold very recently, relatively recently, I guess just this year. But in order to get that deep ruddy tone to it, it is shaded with ruddy leather 9109 to give you that reddish color. That's ruddy leather. And then you highlight it up with various yellows. I think to make it as so rich and saturated here, I was actually highlighting it up by adding lantern yellow mixed into the rich leather. And then when I get to the top part, I do use Nmm Gold highlight plus lantern yellow plus white. And this is a Nmm Gold color and that you would use if you wanted a very saturated gold, a really intense rich gold. As opposed to the Nmm Gold Triad is a good, basic, standard, middle-of-the-road gold. It's not too saturated. It's not brassy on the other end. So this means you have to mix a lot. And you also will go down to, say, brown liner or blackened brown for the darkest shadow. But because you have your mid-tone kind of shadow here, but then you've also got this really dark shadow here toward the top. And you need that for Nmm. You do the same thing with the Triad. You need to use brown liner in addition to the Nmm Gold shadow to really make it work. But you'll find it, and I say this all the time, Clover, but every artist has at least 3 different Nmm recipes, and some of us just totally play it by ear and consistently throw different colors in just because we're working on a model where we feel we have to. I usually do shift the color of gold that I'm using because of the character of the model or... because of the other colors I'm using on the model, things like that. So hey, I will, because this central part's going to be gold and the top part will be gold too. So I'll just lay down this base coat of rich leather. It is such a nice, it's a little brighter. It's a little more yellowy bright and a little less dark compared to Nmm Gold shadow. So it does have a definite, it's similar, but it has a definite difference. We'll just put the edging on our plate here so we don't have a lot of bones surface showing through. Do a quick base coat. But so you can see it's kind of a tawny gold kind of color. Dark gold. Which makes it a good base. I like to start my Nmm a little bit darker. With both gold and silver, actually. Start with a slightly darker color and then highlight it up so that I can... concentrate on where my highlights are going. Placement of highlights is a little more key with metal than the placement of shadows, although they echo each other, so. And I might probably do a ruby right there in the middle of his, the gold thing here. And I could have gone iron with this. Except that I think I'm going to be going iron with a lot of the leg armor. So instead of going with the blue-black up here, I decided to go more gold here. And we may do iron down here and iron on a lot of these greaves and stuff. And then the skirting here will be red, and that'll be gold, probably. Or I'll do a kind of a dark iron around the outside, and then a gold face on the middle. Kind of like I did up here on the shoulder. This guy's just so big. He's got so many things on him. He is gigantic. But I don't want to get kind of this all blocked in. Good morning, Daffod Weir. Hey, KX. We are fire gianting today. I'm gonna take his arm off. We'll keep his sword around, but you know. And I've got a little bit of beating off here. But I'm using this full strength. This paint is going on full strength because it does tend to be just a little transparent, which is great when it comes to, you know, blending it in for transitions, but it's not so good for base coating. So I do use my rich leather with no water in it if I'm putting it on bones. So I want to get a decent coat of coverage straight out the gate, which I did. So that's nice. So yeah, we are fire gianting today because I just felt like it. It's going to be kind of a chill day, hopefully here in Northern California. I have to work on some Patreon stuff and do some prep on food and generally hang out with David and Kiri. All very strenuous, I'm sure you'll agree.
Strenuous hanging out.
Yes.
Although Kiri can be strenuous.
Kiri can be strenuous sometimes, but she continues to. We had a little bit of a setback yesterday, but she continues to improve. The old dog, who was sick for much of this month and interrupted my productivity pretty profoundly. Yeah, not for, like I said, guest appearance, HM Road Dog. Guest appearance. Oh, prize boxes, yeah. I don't... Trying to think if I talked about the Nmm Gold Triad, but, you know, I can. It's kind of a weird triad the way I use it, though, because I definitely doctor it. Like, I mix bits of the shadow into the midtone and the highlight into the midtone. And I tend to, if I want a really yellow gold, I'll mix lantern yellow into everything. So, I don't remember. I've done a lot of NMM on this show, though, Clover. So, yeah, Kiri's been sick. She was really, really sick. She ended up at the emergency vet, Green Users, a week and a half ago. We've been kind of chugging back, trying to build her up again. Oh no, appetizers. Hey, deviled eggs are always good, HM Road Dog. Like, it's not a traditional Thanksgiving food, but deviled eggs, in my opinion, are fantastic. Another thing you could make that's tasty is like warm dips. Like, there was a chili cheese dip. Look up a recipe for chili cheese dip, and it's really tasty. It usually involves like some chili meat and spices and then like a cheese, melted cheese. And it's really hearty and it's tasty with tortilla chips. And so it could be a good appetizer food that's just informal. Oh, we had a little bit of an explosion last night. It's just she had a gastrointestinal thing going on. And so now, you know, it affects both ends. And we've just been trying to build her food back up because she's an old dog and she really needs it. But it's kind of, you know, sometimes it's touch and go. We're trying to wean her off of the special food that I was using to be easy on her gut and get back on regular food. And it's just, you know, it's dicey because Kiri has a pretty sensitive gastrointestinal tract as it is. And so she's always been sensitive to changing food. So now when we're changing food and trying to also dial up the amount of food, it just gets very difficult. Yeah. So, yes, I think deviled eggs are traditional every holiday food because I love deviled eggs. I'm just going to do a bit of lining here with my blue liner to separate out these areas. Just because I like the way it looks, and that gives me a solid edge to blend up to. Scotch eggs. I don't like Scotch eggs as much. It just makes it a little bit too rich for me with the sausage and breading. Like, I like to eat them at the Renaissance Fair. Like, that's my, like, yearly Scotch egg was, you know, was pretty much getting one at the Ren Fair. Because it's actually a food that's vaguely low carb, except for the breading. So if they don't go overboard on the breading, it's actually pretty good if you're on my kind of diet. Which very, very little Ren Fair food is. But yeah, I do like the traditional deviled eggs. I make a pretty good deviled egg. But that, and I like the chili cheese dips. Of course, guacamole is kind of out of season right now, but David and I still love it. I think, honestly, for Thanksgiving, I think just a good old cheese and sausage and crackers tray is almost the way to go. That way everybody can kind of pick their own, you know, poison, so to speak, and you satisfy a lot of different people at the same time, and you have an excuse to go and buy fancy cheese. And you know you want an excuse to buy fancy cheese. It's one of the lighter Scottish delicacies. Yes, I know, Kernico, but my background's German, so it's not like, you know, we don't have a ton of heavy food in our diets either, but yeah, Scotch eggs are tasty. Yeah, it's any excuse to buy fancy cheese. But yeah, do a cheese and sausage platter, especially if you also like jellies. Like, you know, because some jellies and jams are really good on top of cheese and crackers. Yeah, pepper jellies are great. But even just a regular, like, apple jelly on top of brie or, you know, on a cracker, that sort of thing can be really fun for people. We had back when I was back in Texas, there was one time we had to put it on a freaking cracker party. Where everybody brought toppings and crackers for various types. So we had jellies and dips and you know, cheeses and sausage and all sorts of you know, and sliced fruit and stuff like that. And so everybody could construct these cracker things, trying all the different cheeses and all the different dips and jellies. And that was super fun. And meats. There were meats as well, of course, sausages and stuff. So that's a really good thing, and it feeds a lot of people too. Yes, excuse to buy fancy cheese at Whole Foods, pretty much, right? Yeah. Yes, exactly. It's you need to hit Trader Joe's, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, steal the idea for sure. I think it was Brian. I think it was the Stiltzes. It was either the Stiltzes or the Bonos that came up with the put it on a freaking cracker, I think. Party, but it's a great party idea because nobody has to like make anything, right? And you don't have to haul like heated dishes over or bring a slow cooker to heat dishes or use somebody's stove. Everybody brings like a different thing, and with a little bit of coordination, you can all be sure not to bring the same thing. And it does feed a lot of people, and it's pretty filling. Like if you're not looking to provide a big meal. And you can also like supply some heated dips, you know, like heated queso dip or whatever, like I said, and do it that way as well. So if you want something warm, if it's like a cold weather party like Thanksgiving tends to be. So yeah, that's my suggestions, my ideas. Fairly low work for you as well. As far as, yeah, I mean, put stuff out and olives, don't forget olives. Tasty olives. My family always went really kind of low key with cheese and crackers and nuts and olives and a veggie tray. You know, that's this super easy way to give appetizers for a big group of hungry people. And kids tend to like it too because they can pick and choose what they'll eat. Hey there, Ryan. How's it going? I also am everyday chill. It is nice to meet you. We are about to start painting the center part of this fire giant. I work on him in piecemeal bits here and there, everywhere, when I feel like it. We did the Hellhound cape last time, so we started out and did the fur texture and all that. So this time we're doing this middle section. Yeah, olive's tasty. Ah, the cheese castle. Ah, God, there used to be a cheese castle right near my home. God, that takes me back. We pass it every time we went on I-94. Oh, yeah. Now you're hungry. I'm sorry, green users. It is getting toward the lunch hour, so, although I don't know what time it is in Arizona right now. Arizona not being on daylight savings time always throws me off. Like, I never know what time it is to try to call my parents. Yeah, I mean, a prepared cheese board, you can get some really nice ones at the nicer stores nowadays. And you'll pay for it, but 11:15, okay, so you're an hour ahead. Thanks. Now I know when to call my parents tomorrow. All right, so let's start out by looking at highlights. So just putting him under the light, and my light is coming from up that direction, which you can totally see, right? You can see the light picking up, because this is just base coated, but you can see where the highlight is. And this is where it's useful to have a light, you know, that is directional. Like I used to use an overhead lamp where I would just put the model right under that lamp, and I'd look at where the highlights and shadows fall. So, yeah, the skin tone is a weird and complicated skin tone. That I made up by mixing 4 different things, which is what I tell you guys never to do.
Well, it's fine for skin tone because if you don't have an exact match, it's not a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I could mix something that's very close to this and I'd end up looking fine. There's a cheese castle in Kenosha. Oh my god, I grew up near Kenosha, Cuthbert. I was in Bristol. Small world. I never went to the cheese castle. My parents did not go to the cheese castle, but we always got our cheese at the grocery store, like, you know. Or when we had a friend who worked at Merck's, we got discounted Merck's cheese, spreadable cheese. Alrighty. Let us do some wet blended highlights. Oh yeah, when you have a grocery store with a top-notch cheese department, that's just temptation right there. All right, so since I'm wet blending, I'm going to put down my base coat. I put a base coat down underneath this, and I'm going to go back in with my base coat color. And what I want to do is, if you guys look, you can see that this is a rounded highlight. Like, the highlight is actually round-shaped. And the reason for that is that this is a rounded area. So the shape of the area is going to, you know, the shape of the highlight echoes the shape of the area. So, 1 second. Ooh, prosciutto. Don't mention prosciutto. No, now you have to get cantaloupe to wrap with the prosciutto. Yummy. Yeah, I'm gonna get hungry too. You have been told to add an hour to your travel times in Wisconsin for the cheese castle. Wow. Cheese castle raid. All right. And Ren Fair. Yeah. Okay. Yep, the Ren Fair. I actually grew up going to the Ren Fair. My friends worked there. I worked at Six Flags Great America for the summer job when I was a teenager, but a lot of my friends worked at the Ren Fair. So, okay, so I'm going to recoat this area because I'm going to highlight. I'm going to pick up a little bit of white, and I'm going to start smooshing it in. Yay, wet blending. Now, the thinner your paint is here, the longer you can keep this going because you're adding a bit more water to the surface. It's not going to dry as fast, but you don't want to use too much because if you use too much thin paint, suddenly it wants to go everywhere. So we have to remember we want this to be rounded, this highlight, because rounded surface, rounded highlight. And you're ignoring the cracks and crevices. You're just concentrating on the general shape of the highlight. You can go back and play with the cracks and crevices later, but for right now, you are just making a highlight. Plan your assault onto Cheese Castle. You guys.
I think you mean siege.
Besiege the cheese. Yes, it has to be a siege. David is correct. Let's use correct terminology here. All right, so look, a highlight, guys, and it's, as you can see, I've ignored the texture, but it looks nice. It looks like it's a good highlight. It looks like it's a realistic highlight. That's great. So now, if we're gonna make this colored metal, and we're gonna do NMM, we also have to put in a shadow. And the shadow, remember, is going to be underneath the highlight. And how hard up against the highlight it is depends on whether these are like mirror scales or whether they're just a little bit shiny. And I've been doing everything else like it's a bit shiny, but not like a mirror. So maybe have Cheese Castle host a painting gathering. There you go. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to block that in and then blend it. And I'm going to start with my Asmodeus Red. I'm going to, essentially if you've got kind of just a duller shiny, like a surface that's shiny but not super shiny, you will actually get a gradual blend from your highlight through your midtone to that shadow. You won't get a sharp edge like it was Sky Earth NMM. Doing this this thing when Sky Earth, by the way, would be a pain in the royal butt, because every segment would indeed reflect the skyline to some point, like the bumper of a car. That would be too much pain for me today. I want to really be giving thanks and not cursing my existence, so I'm going to not do Sky Earth NMM on this.
The right way to do it would be the same way you're doing it, where you treat it as an overall surface,
right?
And then you Sky Earth that rounded surface.
I don't know, because every little cut is gonna reflect differently than slightly.
Well, I mean,
you could maybe get away with it
for all of the front surfaces. And
yeah.
then you would go in and do all of the
side surfaces more generalized.
Separately.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way you should do it, whether you're doing it as a more continuous, like rougher metal, or a more polished Sky Earth metal. I think you had the right approach.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Yeah, I haven't done Sky Earth on here for people yet, so someday I will. But yeah, I don't feel this model is the right one. I don't know. It'd be interesting to try it, but I think that I still feel like if I tried Sky Earth on this, like if I was looking at a car, I would see every little diamond have a slightly different profile in relative to the horizon, I guess. I don't know. Maybe you're right, though, and it wouldn't. Maybe it would be just broken and continuous. I don't know. We have to... I
mean, it's broken by the edges that you're
right.
painting separately.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. We have to get a bunch of mirrory diamonds. We have No, I get what you're saying.
Line and two different diamonds that are above each other.
Right.
Because they're parallel surfaces, so you'd have one horizon line.
But that was all jagged because it was going across into these dips. David's the expert, guys. We're going to listen to him.
Now I really want to try it.
Now you want to try it? You need a broken up surface so that you can try.
We need another fire giant.
We need another fire giant so we could just do the center section in Sky Earth. Oh, I don't think I have enough. David needs a mic. A huge... Oh, now we're on badgers made of cheese. Oh, I like grilled cheese. Like, that's what I miss about, like... I actually bought David some rye bread the other day, and it's so dangerous because, you know, I'm gluten-free and have been since 2013. With only small forays into gluteinousness. But rye bread, if there was one bread I miss, it's rye bread. Double cam and double painting, Reaper John. Yeah, it's just not worth setting up, sadly, because David is almost always, like, he's off today, and that's why he's available. But otherwise, he's always in meetings in the morning, so he can never... It's not worth setting up a co-stream for David here. People say you need a mic, at least, though.
Your mic is good enough, isn't it?
It mostly is. I've got it set on unidirectional, though. And I don't want to mess with it, because it works. Why would we make an airbrush out of cheese? He's hard to hear. Yeah, that's because I've got it on unidirectional, D-Clearman. I could mess with it, but I don't really want to mess with my mic, because, you know, then it would start to pick up a bunch of background noise when background noise occurs. I guess I could do it just for today. He's doing pastrami on rye, actually. Shadow Raven is what David's been doing. I love Rubens, so I'm like thinking, you know, maybe that I need to pick up some corned beef. have a glutinous Reuben supper one night or something. I do love Rubens. All right, so I've got a slight shadow now down. You guys can see it, right? There's the slight shadow. And because I want it to blend in, I'm not being too heavy-handed with it. Also, remember, I did thin my Asmodeus Red. And Asmodeus Red is not super dark. So we're just going to start out blocking in this shadow. And I'm going to also put a shadow down underneath this area right here, even though I'm going to get some under reflection down here. So I may end up painting over that a little bit. But what we're kind of building up to here is that I will do a mixture of Asmodeus. Here, I'll do it right now. Boop, boop, there. So a couple brushfuls of Asmodeus and then a bit of blue liner. Makes a dark purpley red. And that will be my next shadow. And essentially it'll let me tighten up my shadows a little bit on this. So when I'm doing NMM, a colored NMM like this, I do a lot of mixing to make sure that my shadows still go with my midtone and highlights and everything. Make sure everything works together. So I'll take this shadow I've got here, I'll adjust it maybe just a little bit. I think I want it to go a little bit further up. And then I'll grab my new shadow that I just mixed and put that in the middle of my old shadow. And I'm kind of doing wet blending instead of doing layering today, so that's why I'm kind of like smooshing everything together instead of getting real precise down there. I could have technically grabbed my wet palette for this. Alright, so now I need to look at it and see, yeah, that's reading okay. My highlight's really broad. I may need to bring in more of my midtone because what I'm noticing now is I'm losing my midtone. And I've talked about that. That's a common mistake that a lot of new painters make when they start layering is they put in their shadows and they put in their highlight and they totally lose their midtone. So I'm going to actually thin my midtone color, which is, remember, Heraldic Red, 9402. I'm going to thin my midtone down a little bit. And I'm going to add in, almost spot glaze it back over some of these highlight areas. Oh, turkey Reuben? Yeah. Yep. Reuben's tasty. Man, we're on food, aren't we? I guess this is the lead-in to Thanksgiving, so we're permitted to be on food today. Food is never a bad stream topic, though. So I'm going to glaze over a little bit of this to bring this midtone back in. Get myself more midtone territory. Because if you lose your midtone, then the red isn't going to look red anymore. So you don't want that to happen. You definitely want your red to look red. So bringing that in, I'm kind of shrinking my highlight. Add in a little bit more red. Now what I'm doing here, you'll notice, is a little bit cheaty. I'm keeping the lighter highlight here and I'm adding in my red more here. And I can do that on the other side as well, where I keep a little bit of my highlight on these. Just these edges here. And that's where we're starting to pick out our detailing. So now, as I'm adjusting stuff here, I also can choose to make decisions that start to bring out the diamond pattern more.
But do you usually highlight your red just with pink, or do you do a glaze of red over at the end?
I do a glaze over, usually of red at the end, but it depends. Like right now, I'm going to bring this up to white first, and make sure my highlight is. I wanted to make sure my highlight was correct first. I usually do use a glaze of red over the top though, because it does make it look more like red.
Yeah, you'll definitely get the brightest red that way.
Yep, but we're just setting up right now, so that's something I would do near the end.
Right. Yeah.
So another thing.
Probably after you've done all the edges. Too.
Right, and so guys, now that we did these little edges with more of a highlight here, so you can see the highlights on each of the diamonds out here. The other thing you can do is introduce a shadow. Use your midtone again, and now you can introduce the shadow down the middle of our pink here, and using Heraldic Red, can essentially paint red back in there. So you won't use your darkest shadow up here. You'll use your midtone as a shadow in your highlight area. But see now all of our little diamonds are coming out. They're pretty cool. Actually, my highlight's a little off center though. I need to push it over a little bit. So I need to grab some pink. Grab some pink. And now that I know kind of where my highlight is, I can kind of just paint that in. I don't need to worry too much about doing that broad wet blend. I know roughly how to shift it. There. So now we've shifted it over a little bit, and I'm going to shift it away from this side by knocking down this area here with more Heraldic Red. So we're adjusting. So essentially I decided my highlight wasn't far enough over here because my light source is technically falling here. So I need this area to be a little bit more shadowed. And in this case, shadow means midtone, because it's still close to the light, so that's better. That's a lot better. It's more centered. Oh, French onion soup, tasty. I've been making myself miso soup. I bought miso paste and the flakes, the fish flakes, the bonito flakes. And I love miso soup. And it's pretty cheap to make once you have everything. So it's like, It's my go-to low-calorie soup for winter this year. And very inexpensive. Yeah, I used to love Jason's Deli. Their salad bar is really good. Reaper used to go there a lot with the artists. Because it's a good, everybody can get different things kind of venue. So I'm going to bring in an even brighter highlight now toward the center. It's close to white. And I need to keep it small. But I can this time concentrate on, individual diamonds. And you guys have seen me do this before. When I start out wet blending a general shape, like with hair or fur, then as I add my highlights that I start bringing out the texture on that surface. So there, now we're really getting some light coming down from above, which means I need to darken my shadow, and I think I need to bring my shadow more up. So I'm going to grab my Asmodeus. This is all just tuning. So, like, for those of you, I think it was Karniko who mentioned she's been trying some NMM and with mixed results. But when you see me do this, this is exactly the way I do it in real life. Like, there's often times where I'm like, I start it out, and then I end up adjusting it. Just as I go, slowly, bit by bit. So I'm not perfect at the gate on my NMM. Often I will do like make little mistakes, and then the difference is that I know the rules well enough to troubleshoot it pretty effectively and quickly. Whereas, when you're learning, you need time to develop that sense of how to troubleshoot it. So I'm gonna darken down everything on this side. Got a nice dark shadow. I need a darker shadow on this side if we're gonna make it look really shiny.
What goes in those little holes? Are those like
it's like chains. No, he's got like these ball and chain things that hang off his belt. It's a Wayne Reynolds concept art, so it's what Wayne did for the Fire Giants. So he's got these spiked balls on the end of chains.
So are you gonna shadow under where they're gonna be?
Yeah. I mean, I'm going shadows in general, but I might do it later because they swing. Like some of them they're swinging to one side or something, so I don't immediately know. Like off the top of my head, they're not just hanging straight down because he's moving. They're kind of annoying. I thought about just filling in the holes. It doesn't make sense to me that you would put spiked balls on yourself so that when you turn around, you thwap yourself with them. I mean, maybe giants are just kind of masochistic that way. It's one of my less liked parts of the design on these.
I feel
Sorry,
like
Wayne.
Wayne Reynolds characters frequently have impractical elements.
Impractical elements, yes. And impractical, yes. Lots of impracticality. Lots of design arty stuff. Wayne is still brilliant, of course. We still love you, Wayne.
Than the chainmail bikini.
Yes, exactly. And I loved Elmore for even though he did chainmail bikinis, so I can still love Wayne even though he does spiked hangy balls. Alright, so now you can see how it's much darker on this side though, so let's get on this and darkening down this area. And then, if you feel you go too dark, it's a simple matter to take some Heraldic Red and just kind of bring it over that to blend it in a little bit better. It might take a couple of coats because going over the dark is a little bit harder than going over the light. But also remember that we're going to be still doing like some highlighting and under reflections, so we still have opportunities to bring out areas that can minimize these shadows if they get too dark. So let me grab my Asmodeus and block that in a little bit. Make sure I've got it where I want it. I do find that wet blending with thinner paint and after you're going over a base coat can be very effective. Can be a little bit easier to blend it because it'll naturally flow together. The colors will. All right. That's looking pretty okay. I think I need to go a little darker. But essentially you want a ring of shadow kind of right under your ring of highlight there. And then down here we're going to be bringing up a highlight coming up from below. And that's how you're going to get your and a mem effect. And then you can tune it to take it darker and upper. Cummerbund is such a sudden pattern shift. Oh, bad Axel. He's got more diamond stuff. I mean, he's got diamond stuff here, and he's got a diamond here. But, I mean, it is in the original concept art. It's just a different design element. Because I think because Wayne, you know, there was a lot of texture that went onto this model, and he wanted to switch it up. So, hey, Miniatures Den. How's it going, Luca? 9 months you have subbed to us. Thank you. It is definitely a different pattern, but it's not so much because we do get diamond patterns up here too. So yeah, yes and no. I see what you're saying, Axel. It's so different from a lot of the rest of the textures, but I think that's part of why Wayne did it. I think he was thinking about these diamonds up here on the bracelets, and he was just like, I need a different pattern for this area. What am I going to do? And so he went with that. Chillin'. Thanks. Yeah, here's his sword. He's got a fiery sword. So, boop. Rawr. Rawr, he says. Rawr, rawr, rawr. So yeah. This is, I don't know, this guy is one I've been working on him forever. Luca. He's just kind of like, when I get an idea for how I can utilize him to show a thing, I use him. Otherwise, he's kind of left on the shelf gathering dust. But I like some things. I really like how the sword turned out. I think it's really cool. So maybe the sword alone will be enough to motivate me to continue working on him. But yeah, we're doing kind of a reflective diamond pattern on the cummerbund armor part right now. Because why not, really? I was talking about how when you do a large reflective surface that's got pattern, which is also like in the case with hair, you can just highlight it in chunks before you ever pay attention to the pattern. Just highlight it like it's one big broad shape and then worry about the diamond pattern, for example, which I've started bringing in. So that's what we were kind of talking about today, Luca. That's why I chose to work on Mr. Giant today. So I'm going to bring in up a little bit of under reflection down here. So I'll lighten down below. Because we need a reflective. Your metallic surface is shiny and reflective, guys. Remember, shiny and reflective. And so we need to do paint techniques that allow us to show those things. Those qualities. Yeah, I mean, we have some really nice bigger models, and I've been putting paint on a lot of them, Miniatures Den. When I first started this show, I did a lot of bigger minis, because it's easier to show some stuff, right? Like, you've got a lot of room to show, like, layering, and to show textures, and to, you know, do big fur areas, like his Hellhound cloak, and stuff like that. I've still got a giant that I haven't whipped out. I've got a dragon I'm working on. I'm working on the Sphinx from Julie. Sphinxy is fun because she's gonna have wings, you know, so was working on Sphinx, so that's another relatively big mini, not as big as the giant, but Sphinx is coming along. And then the other big one that I have in progress, other than the gemstone dragon, is the old rock troll, this guy Luca, which I really like. I like how he's starting to come together. We work on him every once in a while when I get in the mood to do gemstones. And he's got kind of the dramatic lighting effect going on, so that's kind of fun. We did a lot of gemstone refinement the other day on him, so he's coming along. But yeah, you should totally bug Ron for some big minis, because I think especially now with ZBrush and everything, we have a lot of nice big sculpts, especially coming out for Bones 5. So you should look at some of the big stuff from Bones 5 and hit Ron up for it. Because it's a fun break, right? Like, we can sit here and paint player characters till the cows come home, but it's a different sort of painting than when you get something this big in your hands, right? So, totally bug Ron for big stuff. I'm kind of sad that I'm not at Reaper anymore in person, so I can't just wander up and snag things off of Ron's desk or the studio table. Gonna put a little bit of You guys can see how thin my paint is, by the way. See how that kind of like just spread out and went splorf? That's how thin I'm working with these wet blends. Just to get it down and make it really easy to blend. Since I already have a base coat down, I don't have to worry about coverage. So I can work a lot thinner and wet blend a lot thinner, which makes it a lot easier to blend in these colors together. They do tend to schlorp together more, like they won't stay autonomous. You'll get more of a mix, but if you want a more subtle highlight like I do down here, that's actually okay. It works for you in that case. So it's always a case of, you know, what effect you're trying to hit and whether it serves you, whether this kind of technique serves you or not. But I find for quick and dirty wet blends that I'm not worrying so much about like super precision or anything, that I can get a quick, fast highlight down so you can see the highlight. I need to get this addressed over here. I'm probably going to pop a shadow out here because his arm is over the top of it, so I'm going to get a shadow, big shadow, and that'll let me kind of fade that back in. All right, so let's see here. I still want that Monique Dunoir with her conquest map. I still want that bust. Hello, Dragon Eye. All right, so let's see here. Let's see how this reads on the camera. So I can see the light. Now, this is bothering me, of course, because we've got this blocked in for an MM and we haven't done anything, and it's totally messing with how everything around it looks. I am going to grab some blue liner and just block in these pits where the balls go as shadows so that they're not offending my eyes anymore. And then I'm going to actually, maybe I will do some NMM today on the gold part too, to show you guys how everything lines up. So let me just block this in so I'm less annoyed at it visually. There comes a point where seeing just blank model offends my eyes. Yeah, there's little swingy balls. Jason or David and I were just talking about it, Rex, where apparently Wayne felt the fire giant like needed swingy iron balls. Or maybe they're rings, or yeah, they're decorative rings. Okay, they aren't giant balls like they are on some of these models, but they're still giant metal things that plug in and can hurt you. So, you know, I'm not worrying about them right now because I'm not really a fan, but they eventually will go in, plug in there. They just add a little bit more dynamism to the model. Where's my plug? Is that my plug? Yeah. So they swing out and they make, you know, they make him look a little bit more dynamic. It echoes the turn of how his torso is turning. David pointed out that I'll need to add shadows under those on the red, but I'm not worrying about it right now. But yeah, but having these things attached when you're trying to paint this is, of course, a pain in the butt. So that's why you don't do it. So I'm not worrying about them currently. I can always add shadows under them. It's not a big deal. But all the fire giants, that's a consistent fire giant design thing, is those swingy balls or rings or, you know, whatever, diamonds in this case. But I don't want to worry about them right now, so I'm ignoring them. It's my prerogative as a painter. I don't generally attach anything if it's going to get in the way of painting something else, so that's one big reason why those swingy chain things are not currently attached. All right, let us see here. I'm going to kind of look at it in person. See, now it's time to maybe bring out more of my details here. So I want to really bring up my highlight on this top part, because if it's shiny, it needs to be pure white or very close to it. And you only want that near the middle where the light is really coming down. I will grab some extra highlighty color. Highlighty color equals pink. I'm using sophisticated terms today. Not really. I obviously am lacking some brain cells. Just kind of accentuating some highlights along here. To make the light really look like it's coming down, I'm going to even accentuate some highlights out here with a slightly lighter red. even though those are in shadow areas, so I have to be careful. Now what I can do here is I can use a lighter pink first and then glaze over it with red. If I want this to be highlighted, but look red still, look darker red. So put down a little bit of pink and then grab some of your Heraldic Red and build a glaze and then glaze right over the top. And this is called spot glazing, where you're not covering an entire area, you're just painting it over one small area. So that I can bring that pink down to be more red, but still show some highlights, but the highlights won't be as strong as they are up here. And I'll use that glaze to kind of glaze in some of these areas too. So now I've got a highlight there, but it's a lot more knocked down. It's not nearly as bright as up here. So that's nice. And it's not as pink either. That's one way David was mentioning this earlier when he was talking to me, is a way to bring your red up with pink without it looking pink is to do a final glaze with the red over the top. And it tends to make everything look more red. Although if I'm going to do that, what I'll probably do is do a glaze with a very vibrant red like Sione Scarlet. And knock everything down. Or clear red would be the obvious choice. To knock everything down and more in line with the red and lose the pink. This is the way, if you want to use pinks to highlight your reds, if you're not going to use a yellow-orange combo kind of thing, this is the way to keep it from looking pink, is to do the glaze with clear red or Sione Scarlet at the end. And to that'll knock it down and make it look more red. Well, one thing you want to do is always keep your pink highlight very small, Nomadzik. If you look at like all of this area, my pink highlights are very small. And then here, let me just grab Sione Scarlet and show you. I'll do one drop of Sione Scarlet, which is close to clear red. I just happen to have it closer to hand. I'm going to do, glazing starts with a 2-to-1, depending on how transparent the color is. And it can go to 3 or even 4-to-1 water to paint. So it's always more water than paint in a glaze. It depends on how strong you want your color. With red, I actually keep it fairly strong. And the reason is red is naturally transparent. And it's also that, I want it strong enough to go over this pink and to knock it down a little bit. But that said, that's showing up pretty strong still. I'm going to go to 3-to-1. 3 water to 1 paint. I should call that 1 to 3, really, to avoid confusing people. What I'm watching here, guys, is how the paint falls off the side of my palette here. Since I use a well palette and not a wet palette, I can use that as an indicator of how strong the paint is. Notice that it still has a lot of red pigment in there. It shows you how strongly pigmented this paint is, even when you thin it 1 to 3. So then I'm going to do a glaze over this whole thing. So boom, 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 boom. This is where it's nice that we don't have this gold part in the middle painted yet, because if I slobber over it, it's not going to care. Now come back, rinse out your brush, wick off any excess that you don't want sitting around in the cracks, because remember, when you thin a paint with this much water, it will not dry correctly, and so it will create artifacts and problems. So you always want to come back, and in this case, I'm wicking it off by going between the cracks, not touching the top surfaces. And by doing that, we have taken this, notice how much more red it looks now. Like, we've taken down the pink, we've knocked it down with a glaze. We still have enough contrast, and if I wanted to, I could bring my white back in now. My pure white. Once this is a little drier. And re-hit my white highlight to take the red out of it. And now it's very red. Now it's almost not pink at all. Like, I've gotten rid of so much of the pink. It'll go purpley, Kiriniko. The way to combat the pink is to do the red glaze. That is the way to combat that pink look. If you go up with a cooler red, like you say, sometimes it won't look as pink. But you could also try glazing with like clear magenta if you didn't want clear red, but it will shift your color. So you really, here with him, I don't want a cold or purpley red. I really want a warm red because he's a fire giant. So in my experience, and this doesn't mean that there's not another way to do it, but in my experience, this is the best way. Glazing with a clear red or close to clear red, like Sione Scarlet, is the best way to highlight with white on red, but have it not look too pink. There may be other ways out there that I have yet to explore, but in my experience, this is the way. There definitely are like certain things where a lot of the time I'll tell you guys, oh, you could try this a whole bunch of different ways. But in this case, after years of trying, because I love to paint red. Red is one of my favorite colors to paint. So yes, we're going to go. This is the way. This is the way. You could try all your other ways. Try all your other ways. Try it. If you find a different way, come back, and then we could say this is one way. But in my experience, this is the way. So, you know, always take me with a grain of salt. I'm a little bit wonky today. Anne's loopy. I haven't even had, like, too much caffeine. I have no excuse. Mandalorian rules. But yeah, there are definitely times where I will kind of, I don't want to say put my foot down, but there are definitely times I will tell you this really is the best way to do it. In my experience, this really is the best way to do it. And it's not hard. I mean, all you're doing is putting a thin wash over the whole area and then just slurping it off with a damp brush, you know, until you leave it just like a filter over the top. Glazing is a technique that you really do want to master to get really good effects in miniature painting. It's just so useful. It's one of your core techniques. It's so useful for little adjustments. All right, let's touch up our little gold thing in the middle of his belt. We're getting close. We started late, though, so we've got another 20 minutes, I think. Kiri's still asleep, so it's all safe. We're safe. As long as Kiri's asleep. You only should be doing one highlight after a glaze. Probably. I mean, glazing, what I do, Kerniko, is I glaze at the last. Like, the very last thing I do tends to be glazing. After I've done everything else, then I glaze, and then, just like you saw me do here, then the only highlight I need to worry about reapplying is the final spot highlight. At least when you're doing this sort of glazing technique. But that's even true with NMM. Like, if I decide to glaze with yellow to make my NMM more golden, I'll do all the NMM, then I'll glaze with the yellow, then the only thing I need to reapply is the white highlight. And so that makes you, like, because yeah, after you do a glaze, if you try to do other highlight stages over the top of it, you're going to disrupt it and you're going to lose some of your what you did, right? So that's totally a thing. So the way that I've always used glazes is to use them very much as an end step, and not do them earlier unless I really want to shift an entire color. But then when I do re-highlight, I need to make sure to factor that in, right? So it's kind of like, remember the Maria, or not the Maria Roseblade, the pirate that we were doing, this lady. I had to glaze her skin to make it warmer, and I did it after I had done all the highlights, and then when I came back in afterwards, I just did the highest highlights again to try to bring it back in line. Because if I did anything else, I would cover up my work with the glazes. So that's something to remember about glazing. No. Do everything, then glaze. Try it that way and see if it works for you. I'm going to cover up some of my red that I accidentally got in our gold here. And I got my Sione Scarlet out, so I'm going to paint this little gem in the middle here. Really bright red. Yeah, no problem. Hopefully that helps you, Kerniko. You know how I hate to see frustration. I always like to help you get around that stuff. Nobody likes frustration. It makes us not want to paint minis. But there's almost always an answer. A way to get around it. Some techniques are just a pain in the butt, and that's just the way it is, but most of the time, there's something you can do. All right, let's see here. Got that gemstone filled in. Got all that stuff. I think I want to take my blue liner, thin it way down, and actually do some really dark shading between the diamonds where my darkest shadow is. Bring that down even a little bit more. A little bit darker, because right now it's not dark enough for me. If I'm not getting a really shiny effect, that means I've misplaced my highlight or my shadow, and my highlight looks great, so my shadow is where it's lacking. So I'm going to take some thinned down blue liner and do the armor lines that are right in the middle of my shadow area. Like that one. And I'm going to extend that a little bit up through here, but I'm not going to like finish that line. I'm just going to do a little bit of it so that it's showing all through where the darkest shadow is. On the other side as well. You can see pretty obviously where my shadow area is. So I'll use blue liner, straight up blue liner for my going between those diamonds to bring out that pattern. And now I can use this darker color as it goes up a little bit more. Now again, when you get to your highlight area, you only want to use your midtone to shade around these guys. But you have a lot of leeway in these other areas to use more of a shadow, to bring out your diamonds more. Just make sure you scale it back as you get toward your really bright highlights. So once again, we're bringing out more of this diamond pattern now. Even in the shadows, which is nice. Got a little bit of under reflection down here, so I need to pay more attention to that in a moment, but I'm doctoring my, trying to tune my shadow a little bit more. That's a little bit better. That's making it look a little darker. Doing areas in NMM that are like this, that are an unusual shape, a rounded surface, they can be very challenging. You may have to stop and kind of reassess a lot. Make sure that you've got your highlights and your shadows correct. But, you know, you usually can go slow like I am and just kind of look at it and assess and troubleshoot. It's not too bad. Just be patient. I mean, understand that it's an unusual surface and it's probably going to take you, you know, a couple tries to nail it. It's useful to you, though, because it can teach you how to troubleshoot, which is a huge part of becoming a better painter. Being able to see why something isn't working. So whenever something isn't working, do try to stop and kind of evaluate it. Ask yourself what you're trying to do, why it isn't working specifically. See if you can narrow it down. Especially look at highlights and shadows, because usually that's where you're going to fail. You're never going to fail in your midtone. Almost never. But highlights and shadows are fraught with peril, and especially the placement of them, or sometimes the color. So I've dropped my shadow a little bit, and see how it's darker. It's going to read a little bit more true now. And I'm going to continue to actually darken it down. Because I find that as I take this shadow darker, the more real this is looking. So that's what I want. I may go in and add a little bit of a shadow to some of these diamonds individually now, like that one. Because so as you get toward the point where you're finished with a section is when you can start picking out little details on these individual diamonds a little bit more if you want to. That's looking pretty good. I like that. All right, cool. So now I want to mess with this area around here. And I do kind of want to also mess with my gold area here and get some shadows laid in at least. Let's do a super quick layout of our NMM on this gold diamond. Super quick. So what I need for my super quick block in of my NMM is I need my ruddy leather, I need brown liner, I need lantern yellow and white. I already have white. So really I just need my brown liner, my ruddy leather, and my lantern yellow. Always a great color to work with for fast NMM if you already have your rich leather. Mixing, by the way, the reason I do this is just because if you mix these two colors, you get something that looks an awful, very, very close to NMM Gold Midtone 9302. So I'm just essentially mixing to get close to that yellow ochre color instead of using that color itself, both because I don't have that color itself like easily to hand, and because I actually like that I get a little bit more vibrant of a color by mixing these than I do by using that color. So it all depends again on what you're trying to do with your NMM and how vibrant you want it to be. Where is my brown liner? I know it's around here somewhere. It's hiding. There it is. I keep all my shadows, like all my shadows and pure white live permanently on my desktop. All of my browns that I use all the time, and my cold blues like Black Indigo, Nightmare Black, Blue Liner, those all live permanently on my desktop. Alright, so now we've got boom, boom, boom. Got our ruddy leather, our yellow, our brown liner, thinning them down appropriately. So our NMM colors are here. And then I've got pure white sitting over to the right, so we're just going to use that. Even though it might have a little bit of pink in it, oh noes, but it'll still look white. So I'm thinning down my ruddy leather a lot, because it's just going to be kind of a subtle shadow, like it is up here on this crown. I'm not thinning down my brown liner as much, because I want it to be pretty solid for my shadows. My yellow I'm keeping pretty strong, because I want it to mix well with my rich leather here. And yellow is pretty see-through as it is. So that's my kind of quadrad of gold NMM here. That's a non sequitur HM Road Dog. Alright, so looking at this up in here, up in the light, see how we've got a highlight here. I've got highlights kind of around the gemstone. Got a highlight on this upper edge, but the main highlights are probably going to be upper edge and at the top of this thing and this surface. So, going to block in some of that. Going to grab some white and add it to my yellow to make a light yellow. And I'm going to use that as an edging. Just kind of, all we're doing now to block in this NMM is we are literally blocking in highlights and shadows. So we're going to hit our highlights. A little bit of a highlight here. A little bit of getting a little bit of a secondary highlight down there because the gemstone is transparent. Going to get an under reflection coming up from underneath. Edge, underside, edge. I'm blocking in highlights first. Now I can take shadows. Grabbing my ruddy leather first. It's going to be a shadow here. Big shadow down here. Shadow under that. Shadow here. And I'm just going to kind of run with it and see... like, just, if I make mistakes here, it's not a big deal. Mostly I just want to kind of block in this so that it doesn't interrupt how I'm looking at. I need it, at this point, having it blank is really interrupting how I'm reading the reflection on these underscales down here and how I'm painting them. So I decided I needed to tackle this real quick. Gonna grab my brown liner. My darkest shadows are going to be under my brightest highlights. So I'm going to have a thin band of shadow coming down there. If I feel like it's getting too dark, I'm going to grab some ruddy leather and blend it in. You do want it dark, though. I mean, you do need it to be significantly dark to look shiny. There's going to be a shadow here and here. Maybe not quite as dark as I have it there. But we'll see what we can do. There's going to be a shadow here. Be a shadow there. And I'm kind of reading how I want things to go here. These little rivets are going to get an outline. This is difficult because it's like, it doesn't really have a, like, it's not a sharp indentation here, but I feel like it should be. So I'm going to actually line around this central diamond. I might have to do some paint plastic surgery because I don't like kind of the imprecise way that this is molded. I feel like it should be sharper. I feel like there's kind of a suggestion of it being sharper, which is why I can draw these lines in the first place. So I'm going to go with it because it gives me more structure to do this NMM. If it's just a kind of amorphous blob without this inner diamond, then it gets a lot harder to figure out where your highlights and shadows are. Alright, so lock that in. That's getting a little bit better. Again, this is a very difficult area because there's really only the highlight coming there. A lot of this is facing downward. So if it's getting any light at all, it's going to be light that's bouncing back up at it. So you got to kind of play around a little bit. I'm going to mix my rich leather, my lantern yellow, and my white to get a little bit of a highlight here. And once I get this reading correctly, I'll just stop because I just want it to not be interfering with the way that I'm reading the red around it. I've never been one for Westerns. Well, I mean, my brother's a huge Clint Eastwood fan, so I grew up, and so is my dad, so he grew up watching a lot of Clint Eastwood, and that's classic. But it's never been my kind of genre. My genre is fantasy and science fiction for sure. I appreciate what the Western does. It just doesn't speak to me as much as it speaks to some of my friends. Alright, a little more pure white over here. Sometimes if you have a long line that's kind of reflecting light from above, you don't put a white highlight across the whole line. It helps if you interrupt it a bit. So here, kind of leaving a gap and accentuating the corners. There's still a highlight there across the whole thing, but it's not pure white across the whole thing. You see it right there at that upper edge. It's just a stylistic choice more than anything. It tends to make it look more realistic because usually even like a straight sword edge, there's definitely one point where it's brighter and then it fades out. And then maybe it picks up an extra highlight at the edge because it's reflecting light from somewhere else. Depends on what your light source is also. But doing this kind of precise popping of the highlights, see now it's looking a lot more metal. But now I've got to watch out because I'm moving away from the light source. I'm going to use more yellow in my highlights out toward the edge here. A lot less pure white. May use just tiny touches of pure white that's kind of mixed with my yellow, my lantern yellow, to just accentuate some details. But I'm going to be really, really cautious with it. I'm not going to use a lot. I'm just going to use a little, see? So that it still remains evident that you've got a lot of your light falling here and not over here. Yeah, I could see how The Mandalorian is a Western. As far as what they patterned it on, as far as its the way it progresses and its journey. Let's see here. Now I just want a little bit of a highlight to kind of go down across this surface and also come down from above here to bring that surface up. I'm gonna assess whether I've gotten too dark in some of these shadows, like I've lost some of my gold in there. So I might bring it back. Again, this is all just, you see, this is, even with me, and I've been doing NMM for a long time, and I do it a lot. Even for me, guys, this is just a series of adjustments, right? I'm assessing where I go too dark, I'm assessing where I go too light, the ability to figure it out. Sometimes when you're learning, you just have to go, maybe I made this too dark, and try to lighten it and see if that helps. It's how you troubleshoot. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to make that a little lighter. That's a little better. There, that looks right now. I've got my kind of my series of reflections here. They're all in a line, which is important. Bringing in a little bit more of my gold color. Got to tackle the stuff down here on the underside, but it's looking a little bit better now. I probably can go forward with just a little bit more highlight. I think I can go forward and work on my red down here. But I needed this, instead of having this big blank area here, I needed to see my light sourcing in it, and so that I could be consistent with everything. It's important to be consistent when you're doing lighting. And consistent not just in one surface, but in all the surfaces that are shiny and close by each other. Got a little bit bright there, I think. Well, it's not too bad, actually. Yeah, that's looking nice now, that little NMM thing-a-doozy. It's getting there. It's getting there. It still needs some more dark shadows. It needs some work. But it's going. It's getting there. I'm happy. Happy with where it's at the moment. Get a little bit more dark over here. A little bit more dark over here. Now that's looking pretty good. Yay! Shiny thing. Look, it's a shiny thing. So I want to bring in that border. I blurfed it a little bit. There. Much better. So yeah, I think that's reading pretty well now. That shiny in the middle of the area. So now I can work on this lower area. And mostly what I'm going to do is work it diamond by diamond. It's getting there, right, Kerniko? It's all highlights and shadows. Like, even if you can't blend worth anything, guys, if you can nail where the highlights and shadows are, your NMM would look awesome. It's like, and then you just need to work on your blending. So really focusing on the light. Like, here we go. Here's our light coming from above, right? It's going to be right above where it is on this upper rim here. Be right above where it is here, right? The light's going to be coming down consistently, right? Consistently from above. So get your light good. Then reach for your darks. and put your blocks of dark in. Now, your darks may be a little bit different depending on how glossy or shiny this area is, this gold rim. If you make it about the same level of shininess, then it's probably your darks are going to echo the darks here on the red. But if you're shinier up here, they may not be entirely in tandem. So because everything's going to react according to what surface it is. Let's see here, a little bit of white. That's not bad. And then it blends out toward another highlight. Just mixing up a quick highlight color. Mixing rich leather, lantern yellow, and white for all of this. Another highlight coming out back here. So you can kind of get kind of a wobble effect like that. So it's like highlight, shadow, highlight, alternate. This is just very simple for a very simple area. You're not trying to be complex when you're doing borders. You're just trying to get the light consistent. That's all. You're trying to back up everything else you've done. All right, that works. Okay. Sorcery. Thinking about how light falls is the key to NMM. It took me a lot of staring at Lord of the Rings to click on it, and staring at car bumpers in front of me, and staring at light posts, and staring at brush ferrules, and generally look at metal. If you want to get good at metal, look at metal. See how it acts. Watch the reflections. When can you see colors in it? When can't you? How saturated are the colors? Are they as bright as they are in the surrounding, or are they not? Often they're muted slightly. But mostly figure out where your light is coming from, and then watch where the shadow is and where the reflections are. If you can get that locked in up here, everything else is easy, relatively speaking. But that conceptual technique of how light falls is key to almost every what we call advanced conceptual technique out there. Whether you're working on highlighting hair or skin, or you're doing a dramatic lighting effect, or you're doing gemstones, or you're doing NMM, or you're doing OSL, any of those things, any of the light sources or glowing objects, anything like that, depends on you understanding where your light source is, where your shadow needs to be, and where your other highlights need to be. Yep, superhero coloring books, also a great resource. Good point, Dragoneye. I hadn't thought of that, but you're right, because the way that the dramatic highlights and shading in those are perfect practice for the conceptual techniques. And they often have dramatic lighting effects and all sorts of fun stuff, too. Alright, let's see here. I need a shadow. I do want some shadow around here. I need a bit of a shadow falling from this area here. I want a red to hit the bottom of this, though. And on this side. So I'm kind of going to block in my colors again. And then I'm going to line right above. Lining also helps. So like if you're trying to figure out if your lighting looks right, always make sure you're putting it up against something that's not just gray or primer or whatever. So give it a ground to be against. In my case, I would normally paint this in blue liner, but obviously I've got some beading. Oh no, it's because my blue liner is really thin. Come here, blue liner. Bad beading, no cookie. Full strength paint needed. Using your coloring book with airbrushes to help airbrush control. I think that doing the grid lessons that Aaron Lovejoy does is probably the best way to start to do your practice your airbrush control. He has exercises that he gives out in his airbrushing class. But you probably could do a coloring book too. I mean, the big problem with coloring books and doing that way is that usually the pages aren't thick enough to handle water saturation, so you have to be very careful. I often wish that somebody would do a coloring book on watercolor paper, or at least a higher gauge paper, so that you could use, watercolor colored pencils a little bit easier and stuff like that. As it is, I have to use a brush pen if I'm going to do, like a water brush, if I'm going to do colored pencil, water soluble on a coloring book. I have to be real careful about my water distribution. There is no should. Like, when you want to get better at airbrush, then do it. You only should do it if it's in your current, set of goals that you're actively working on. I think the problem is we all have so much, that we feel we should be doing or working on, when really you just need to eliminate all your goals except for, 1 or 2 that you are actively working on, and quit feeling guilty about the others, dang it. It's totally counterproductive to feel guilty about stuff that you don't have the time to work on. Limit your, see, okay, now look, guys, since I did that dark layer, look how much better this is looking now. Look how much you can see now how the red is coming along. A lot better now that we've, when it was up against that gray plastic, you just couldn't see it. But now that we've defined it, and this is why I tend to finish out an area and then line around it, because it gives me that frame of reference. Yeah, it's kind of like the Yodaism, Kariniko. It's more that I think we all and I suffer from this, so this is why this is hit my shiny red button of passion here, is that I do this all the time. I set too many goals for myself on any given day, and then I obsess about what I should be doing, when I'm doing something else, which is totally counterproductive and does nothing except make me stressed out. So I've been trying very hard, even though it feels like I'm not loading enough into my day. It really does. After having massive to-do lists for so many years, it feels to me like now I'm not loading enough into my day, like I'm slacking or something. But you know what? It still takes me the whole day to get through my list, and I'm not anxious about not completing anything because I only put things on my list that I was going to actively work on. So I think it's this malady. I think I'm not the only one who has overblown to-do lists. To-do lists of wishfulness that I don't actually, I hope I'll get to some of those things, but I don't really think I'm going to get to them, I know. Alright, so I had to remove some mold stuff. Yeah, you make too many lists too. Yeah. I mean, okay, making a list of, hey, I'd like to I don't want to forget to do this at some point. I have a list of, I don't want to forget these goals, right? Having it, I don't want to forget these goals lists is good. But you shouldn't, I'm going to work on all these goals today list. That's the problem with lists, is make them and put them aside. Get a notebook that you just use to kind of track goals that, you'd like to work on, but you're not going to work on right now. That way you won't forget them, and then your brain can kind of forget them and let them go off because you've told your brain, okay, we're not going to work on this today, brain. Sorry. And then check in with those lists periodically to make sure. And then if you look at one item and you're like, oh yeah, I totally want to work on that this week. I want to work on my airbrush control. I should get out the coloring books. Then you can actively choose to do it instead of kind of feeling stressed out because you have so many things that you're not working on that you want to work on. I guess we all want to be able to do everything at once. We all want to believe that multitasking will somehow magically enable us to do everything we want to do. When in reality, we really do have to make priorities. And that's true in painting as with anything else. That's why I put out that list of techniques for free on my Patreon, guys. Patreon.com/paintingbig. I believe I did put it up a little while ago, but it's essentially a list of foundational or fundamental techniques in miniature painting in order of when I feel it's useful for you to learn them. And you can mess around with the list a little. I mean, it's not set in stone list. So if you really want to try layering before you try lining, I mean, feel free. But It's meant so that you can kind of set one goal at a time. I see so many people, I want to do NMM on a glowing object and I want to work on my blending, and they're trying to do it all in the same thing. So they're essentially messing up a lot in 3 different ways instead of just in one way, and then it's really hard for them to untangle what went wrong, and it's even more hard for them to fix it because they're trying to learn 3 things at once, and they don't get as much out of the experience because it's confusing. Like, what went wrong here? Well, that was the NMM. Well, what went wrong here? Well, that was your lighting, which is kind of related to the NMM, but different. So it's not helping you learn. So that's why I did that list, and it's really so you can kind of say, okay, on this mini today, I'm going to work on lining. I'm going to try to work on choosing contrasting colors that are light and dark and not just all mid-gray and mid-tones, and I'm going to try to line, and work on things like that one at a time. That way you can be proud that you did really good lining and not be worried about the fact that at the same time you messed up your NMM and your skin tones, whatever. Let's take the anxiety that we feel in our day-to-day jobs, where we were always so that's a problem too, right? Is that our jobs ask us to do 15 different things all at once, and they want all of them are the same priority, and all of them are due tomorrow. And I speak from experience. And that's bad, right? Because it's a habit. It carries over into our regular lives, when really we just need to step back and go, you know what? I'm going to work on one thing today. It's going to help my mental health so much to just work on that one thing. I think that's why holidays can be more relaxing. Even though there's a lot to do, it's all just related to the holiday. So it's not like you're trying to juggle everything at once. So yeah, pretty much trying to remove I should be doing X from my vocabulary. It's like, if I should be doing X and it's real, like I really should be doing X, then I need to drop my other things and do X. That's it. But if X is not that important, then I need to drop that feeling of guilt that I'm not doing X, like, right out. It should not be a thing. Yes, Twisted Dome, I have a great one. Yes, accomplish. Yeah, I know. Enjoy Thanksgiving, Twisted Dome. It's been great spending the day with you. Have a great one. Take care. Yes, NMM equals non-metallic metals. Sorry, Viman Aqua. Non-metallic metals. So, like I'm doing all over here. Everything on this guy is non-metallic metal. Like where I'm trying to paint this gold face, and the gold here where I'm trying to make it look reflective, and the same with the gold bracelet out here, where I'm trying to do the light sourcing. The armor here, where the dark metal is not painted in metallics, that's NMM, non-metallic metal. It's also true of the red here, because I'm trying to make it look like it is shiny. Whenever you're trying to create a surface and make it look shiny when it's not actually shiny, when you're actually painting it in non-metallic paints, and non-shiny paints, then you're doing NMM, essentially. Yes, Tashi, and that's a good idea. Like, it should not even exist. Like, start first by thinking about overhead lighting on your models. Try to think about putting highlights on areas that are raised toward the top of the figure and putting shadows on the underside of areas. If you start out with that alone, that will help you when you start thinking about this sort of thing, because it'll give you an understanding of how light is falling on your figure, and it'll give you a starting point to thinking that way, because all of the other fun stuff you do, like transparent cloth and glowing objects and NMM and all that other fun stuff, that all requires you to kind of understand how light is falling on your figure first. So if you start out with just the simple manner of thinking about where your highlights are and where your shadows are, that sets you up for success down the road. Don't feel like you're like walking instead of running, unless that's in a good way. It's meant to build on things so that you're not sabotaging yourself. Like, trying to run too fast does sabotage yourself. Then you get disappointed. Maybe you learned something, but you probably could have learned it more effectively if you went a little slower. Hey, green users, have a fun. I was so glad to see you guys today. I'll work on the Sphinx probably a little bit next week, Julie. It was great having you guys on the stream. Thanks for coming along. Alrighty, so now what I'm going to do to bring out this under reflection, guys, is I'm going to concentrate more on the individual scales, because I've kind of got a little bit of a highlight blocked in, and I've got my scales defined by lining, so I'm going to take some of my pinky white and just kind of concentrate toward the bottom of each of these scales. And I don't want to go really strong, because I don't want it to be as strong as my highlight. Under reflections are never as strong as your top highlight. You're just trying to get a little bit of the light reflection that we started, and you're trying to accentuate that like that. What do we got? We are, yeah, oh wow, it's 11:30. Dang, it's late. I went late. You guys totally let me go late without, like, telling me, hey, Anne, you've gone way over time. But that's okay, because I'm not working tomorrow or Friday, so putting a little extra time now is good. So now you can see those lower edges, you know, just by that little highlight. It looks like they're picking up light when you look at this from the front now. So now we have our completed shiny and reflective. So for shiny, you need to have a highlight that's backed by a dark shadow. That contrast is what gives you shiny. And then the under reflection is lighting coming back up at the underside of a surface beneath the shadow from the environment. Yep, bonus Ann time. That's right. Just because I'm slacking tomorrow and Friday, not doing any of my streams, spending 4 days playing WoW with David, or cooking Thanksgiving, cleaning the house, and just playing WoW with David, because the house desperately needs cleaning. I'm desperate for cleaning time. There's just that point, right, where your housework like builds up to the point where you look around you and feel despair, and that's when you have to do something. You can only do so much like little catch-up work here and there. So there we go, guys. So there you are. Now we have a shiny cummerbund with a shiny thing in the middle. I just haven't done the gemstone. So that's at least blocked in, and I can continue. Awesome. So that's our giant has progressed further. He progresses slowly. He progresses. Let me see here. Can I back out again? I can. There we go. So now you can see him all in frame. Yeah, and the red parts now are becoming more useful. Like putting the red in these bracelets, definitely a good call, because then I've got all this red here. I need to relate it to something, so there needs to be red up on this bracelet. And I'll probably make these little diamond patterns up here also red. Since these diamonds are red, these little diamonds up on the handle will also be red. So, yeah. Good. Good girly. A girl called Carl. A girl called Carl. So I'll call you Carl. Or Carla. Carl. But thank you. Yes, I try to be informative for new people. I try to be informative and encouraging for new people at all times, even when I'm painting to like a high standard. Carl is good? All right, good. Your pies are in the oven. Evil Halfling, good for you. Feeling inspired to paint. Good. All right, everybody. Run, take the rest of the day off and go paint something fun. All right? That's my holiday wish for you. Do we have a raid, Justin? Is there anybody out there, or are they all taking the day off? I heard it, Justin. I heard him stir.
I always forget my mic is muted. I'm talking to myself here. Have been talking to myself.
Oops.
Yeah, we have a Sky Daddy actually.
Oh, and what is she painting?
And it looks like she might be doing a WoW themed. Hold on, let's see here.
Ooh, because of the new expansion?
Oh, she's Be Right Back right now.
Aww.
But it looked from the thumbnail like she was doing some sort of WoW themed something.
She totally should do Sylvanas. Maybe she did Sylvanas yesterday and we missed it.
Oh man.
Yeah, that would be awesome. The Banshee eyes and all that. All right. Well, we'll raid Sky Daddy, and when she comes back, tell her hi from us, guys, and please have a wonderful rest of your day. Please do get a ton of painting in today, or this weekend, because hey, it's a holiday weekend. That's what it's for. And I will see you all again on Monday. Wow, a long time from now. Have fun and have a great holiday, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys very much. We will talk to you later.